Victoria stepped off the transport ship and felt the cool air of the space station wash across her face. The artificial gravity pulling at her muscles in a way that reminded her of home, of Earth. Of the place she had left behind 3 weeks ago to come to this massive facility that orbited between stars. Like a guardian watching over nothing, the training academy was enormous, with corridors that stretched for what seemed like miles and walls that hummed with the sound of advanced technology working in perfect harmony. Everything here was designed by species that had conquered the stars generations ago. Everything here was built to test warriors and soldiers. Everything here was built for the strong. Victoria was human. 22 years old, from a small city on Earth called Minneapolis. And according to every species in the Galactic Military Alliance, she had no business being here. She pulled her dark hair back into a ponytail as she walked toward the registration desk, her blue eyes scanning the other trainees moving through the hallways. Most of them were taller than her. Many had skin that reflected light in ways that shouldn't be possible. Some had too many arms. Some had none at all. All of them looked down at her like she was a mistake that someone had forgotten to remove from the admission list. The registration officer, a being made of crystalline structures that caught and refracted light into 1,000 colors, looked up at her and made a sound that was either surprise or disgust. Victoria couldn't quite tell. Human female. Age 22. Designation Victoria Grant. You have been assigned to Combat Track 7. Your instructor will be Commander Zix. Your quarters are in Sector 12, Row B. Unit 437, the officer said, the words coming out in perfect English. Even though she could see the being's mouth, didn't seem designed to make those sounds at all. Victoria nodded and took the datapad the officer handed her. Trying not to show that her hands were shaking slightly, she made her way to Sector 12, passing training rooms where she could see other beings practicing with weapons she didn't recognize, using fighting styles that didn't match anything she had learned in the basic human military academy back on Earth. Everything here was faster, stronger, more advanced. Her quarters were small but clean. A single bed, a desk, a window that looked out at the stars beyond the station. She sat on the bed and allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of what she was about to do. She had volunteered for this program because she believed humans deserved a place in the Galactic Military Alliance. She had volunteered because she wanted to prove that people from Deathworlds weren't just survivors. They were warriors too. The next morning, Victoria reported to Combat Training Room 7, where she found Commander Zix waiting for her. He was tall, with gray-blue skin that seemed to shift color depending on the angle of the light. He had eyes that didn't blink, and when he looked at her, it was like being examined by a machine designed to find weaknesses. You are the human, he said, and it wasn't a question. I received a notification 3 days ago that I would be instructing a member of your species. I thought it was an administrative error. Humans do not have the neural pathways required for advanced combat training. Your species thinks in straight lines. You react slowly. You lack the physical enhancements that make a proper warrior. Victoria felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm and steady. I've come to train, Commander. I'm ready to learn what you can teach me. Zix made a sound that might have been laughter. What I can teach you will be irrelevant if you cannot physically execute the movements. Come, we will begin with basic assessment. Let me determine how far behind you already are. For the next 2 hours, Victoria moved through a series of tests designed to measure strength, flexibility, reaction time, and endurance. There were machines that measured her muscle density, tools that tracked her movements against holographic opponents, and tasks that seemed designed specifically to make her fail. When it was finished, she was exhausted, her muscles burning, her breath coming hard. Zix reviewed the results on his datapad and made that same sound again. Your results are significantly below Academy standard. Your reaction time is actually acceptable by baseline human measurements. But your strength is the real problem. I have scheduled you to begin in the general tournament next month. You will compete against other trainees in a ranking system. This should help you understand where you truly stand." Victoria's eyes widened. "A tournament against the other trainees. I've only been here one day. That was the point," Zix said. "I want you to understand quickly that your presence here is not an insult to my teaching ability, but rather a courtesy extended to your species as part of the Galactic Integration Agreement. Once you lose your first match, which you will, you can decide whether you wish to continue or request reassignment." As Victoria left the training room, she passed an ensign in the hallway, a human male with dark hair and kind eyes. His name was Lucas, according to the nameplate on his uniform. He was one of the few humans she had seen since arriving at the station. "First day's rough," he said, offering her a small smile, especially with Zix. "He doesn't like humans much. Something about a mission that didn't go the way he expected." "The tournament," Victoria said. "I'm being entered into a tournament next month, against beings that seem to have twice my strength and 3 times my technical knowledge." Lucas nodded slowly. "That does sound rough, but you know what? There's actually a quiet room on level 37 where a lot of human trainees go to think things through. It overlooks one of the observation decks. If you need to clear your head after training, that's where I go." Victoria thanked him and continued to her quarters. As she walked through the corridors of the academy, she thought about Earth, about the storms that came through her city in summer with winds that could tear buildings apart, about the winters that forced people to survive without modern conveniences when the power went out, about the animals that shared her world, predators that would never stop hunting just because you were tired. She thought about being human, about coming from a place where survival wasn't guaranteed, where you learned to fight because the world demanded it of you. She had 6 weeks to prepare for that tournament. 6 weeks to prove that a girl from a Deathworld could stand beside the galaxy's greatest warriors and not embarrass herself completely. The days before the tournament moved like water dripping from a faucet. Slow and inevitable, Victoria trained every morning with Commander Zix, pushing her body past what she thought were limits. Her muscles grew stronger, her reflexes sharper, but every assessment still showed her significantly below the expected performance level for tournament competitors. In the evenings, she would find herself in the observation room that Lucas had mentioned, a quiet place overlooking the stars. It was there that Emma found her on the 14th day of her training. Emma was a human medic from the southern African continent, tall and graceful, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to hold both kindness and sadness at the same time. "You are Victoria, the fighter entering the tournament," Emma said, sitting down beside her. "Everyone in the human section is talking about you, not good things." "I imagine," Victoria said, staring out at the stars. "Actually, interesting things," Emma said. "Some people think you are brave. Some think you are foolish. Some think you are the first human to truly understand what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves." Victoria turned to look at her. "I just want to not embarrass myself. I don't need to be a symbol." "Too late," Emma said with a small smile. "You already are one, but not in the way you think. People have been watching humans since we joined the Alliance, wondering if we are truly capable or just clever animals playing with advanced tools. Your willingness to face warriors from civilizations that have been fighting for thousands of years, that changes the story." The tournament began on a Thursday. The arena was massive, with stands rising up to hold thousands of spectators. Victoria watched from the preparation area as battles unfolded. Aliens fighting aliens, each match a display of incredible speed and power. She saw warriors with 4 arms coordinate attacks that seemed impossible. She saw beings made of energy that flickered in and out of visibility. She saw creatures that moved like liquid and struck like solid objects when her name was called for her first match. The crowd made a sound that was distinctly mocking. Her opponent was a Zelian, a species known for their physical prowess and combat history. He was twice her size and had the confident stride of someone who had never lost a match. The bell rang and the Zelian came at her immediately. His movements were fast and powerful. He expected her to panic, to dodge away. Instead, Victoria moved forward into the attack, not trying to match his power, but using his momentum against him. She had learned something about Deathworld living that seemed to confuse advanced civilizations. Sometimes the only way to survive was to move toward the danger. Instead of away from it, she pivoted and struck him across the jaw. The blow didn't have enough force to truly damage him, but it surprised him, made him hesitate for just a moment. In that moment, Victoria moved inside his guard and brought her elbow up toward his face. He blocked the move, but the effort cost him balance. She grabbed his arm and used her legs to bring him down. They hit the mat hard, and Victoria went for a position that controlled both his arms and his torso. The move was basic, something she had learned when she was 16 years old in a simple gym back in Minneapolis. The Zelian struggled to escape, but he couldn't generate enough power to throw her off. After 20 seconds, he made the gesture of surrender. The crowd was silent. Even the judges seemed unsure what they had just witnessed. A human girl had just defeated a Zelian warrior. Victoria helped him to his feet, and he looked at her with something like confusion in his expression. He said something in his own language that she didn't understand, but his tone suggested he was not insulting her. Her second match came 3 days later, this time against a Krellian, a species that prioritized flexibility and speed. Victoria fought differently against this opponent. She focused on distance and timing rather than grappling. She let her opponent tire himself out with flashy attacks that didn't land. And then she moved in with precise strikes aimed at sensitive areas. Her joints, her breathing passages, her balance centers. It was a boring fight to watch. Victoria knew that. But it was a winning one after her 4th consecutive victory. Even Commander Zix came to watch her fight. He stood in the shadows near the arena and observed her match with something that might have been interest. He said nothing to her afterward, but she noticed him speaking with Captain Olivia, the human officer who had recommended Victoria for the program in the first place. "You're winning," Lucas said, finding her in the observation room again. People in the galactic news feeds are actually discussing human combat capability now. Some are calling you a statistical anomaly. Others are suggesting your wins don't count because your opponents underestimated you. Did I win fairly? Victoria asked. Or did I win because everyone thought I was weak? Most, Lucas said. That's what makes you interesting. You prove something about humans. Maybe not through raw strength or technical perfection, but through something else entirely. You prove that we don't give up, that we adapt to what we face, that we fight smarter when we can't fight stronger. The tournament continued. Victoria moved through match after match. Her wins became less surprising and more expected. The media coverage increased. Human interest groups from Earth began monitoring her progress. Some aliens began to whisper that perhaps the human integration into the military alliance had been underestimated on the day before her biggest challenge. A match against Noah, an elite warrior from the Tranor Empire. Victoria found Emma waiting outside her quarters with medical supplies. This is going to be your hardest fight yet, Emma said, examining Victoria's shoulders and arms for any signs of injury. Noah has never lost. He has been training since he was a child in one of the most competitive academies in the Galactic Alliance. He sees your victories as a personal insult because they suggest that his dominance is not as absolute as he believed. Then I am probably going to lose. Victoria said, probably. Emma agreed. But you might also show him something he has never seen before. A human who doesn't fight like a Tranor or a Zelian or a Krellian. A human who fights like a human, and maybe that will be enough. The arena was packed for the Noah match. News outlets from across the galaxy had sent their reporters to cover the event. The human who came from nowhere challenging the undefeated prodigy. It was the kind of narrative that transcended species and spoke to something universal about competition and doubt and the question of whether anyone could truly claim dominance. In a universe filled with infinite variation, Noah stood across from Victoria, and he did not try to hide his contempt. His posture screamed absolute certainty of victory. He was taller than her by almost 2 feet. His species had evolved in higher gravity environments, and their muscle density was greater than hers could ever be through natural means. He had been fighting since before Victoria was born. He had never lost a single match in his entire competitive career. "This will be quick," Noah said, and his voice carried perfect confidence. "I respect your courage in stepping into this arena, human. But courage is not a weapon that works against superior strength." Victoria did not respond. She simply waited for the bell. When it rang, Noah came at her with overwhelming force. His attacks were designed to end matches quickly. Powerful strikes aimed at ending the fight in seconds. Victoria met his aggression not with her own strength, but with her willingness to absorb the impact and keep moving. Humans from Deathworlds had learned long ago that sometimes survival meant taking damage and continuing anyway. She blocked a strike that felt like being hit by a falling object. Her arm went numb from the impact, but she pivoted and drove her forehead toward Noah's face. It was a simple technique, crude by the standards of advanced civilizations, but it was effective. Noah pulled back just enough that her strike caught his cheek instead of his nose, but the message was clear. She would not simply absorb punishment without responding. The match became something different than Noah expected. Victoria was not trying to defeat him through strength or technical mastery. She was simply refusing to be defeated when he pushed her. She absorbed the force and came back. When he tried to lock her in position, she twisted and escaped. When he attempted to control distance, she closed it and made the arena her home instead of his by the middle of the match. Noah was frustrated in a way that was clearly visible to everyone watching. The undefeated champion was struggling against a human from a death world. His pride was being challenged. His record was being threatened. And worse, Victoria was still fighting, still moving. Still refusing to quit. Victoria took a strike that cracked something in her left side. Pain shot through her like lightning. She knew she had broken ribs. She kept fighting. She used the damage as motivation instead of as a reason to stop. She had come from a planet where broken bones were something you worked through, where pain was information rather than permission to surrender in the final minutes of the fight. Noah made a mistake born from frustration. He overextended on a powerful attack. Victoria was there, and she moved inside his guard. Her hands locked around his legs. Her body drove him to the mat. He fell hard on his back with Victoria's weight crushing down on him. The move was simple, something children learned in wrestling classes on Earth. But it was devastating when executed against someone whose training had never prepared them for an opponent who would trade position and damage for control. Noah managed to roll and escaped. But the damage was done. Victoria had taken him to the mat, something his previous opponents had never achieved. When the final bell rang, the judges ruled it a draw, which meant that Noah's perfect record remained undefeated. But his dominance had been questioned in a way that could never be fully repaired. Victoria limped to the medical wing, each breath sending fresh pain through her broken ribs. Emma examined her with careful hands and confirmed the damage. "You cracked 3 ribs on your left side. There is no displacement. You should heal without surgery. But you need to rest." "How long until the next match?" Victoria asked. "You cannot fight with broken ribs," Emma said firmly. "How long?" Victoria repeated. Emma sighed. 14 days if we accelerate healing with the advanced treatments available here. 21 if we heal naturally." "Give me the natural healing," Victoria said. "I want to show them that we don't need advanced technology to survive. I want to show them that humans heal too, that we recover, that we get back up." Admiral Chun of the Galactic Council came to visit Victoria in the medical bay 2 days after the match. He was old for his species, with gray in his hair and something wise in his expression. He sat beside her medical bed and studied her face for a long moment before speaking. "Your match with Noah has changed the narrative in the council chambers," he said. "Some members now believe that humanity represents a threat to the established order. Others believe we have been missing opportunities in our alliance. All of them are viewing your species differently than they did 1 week ago. What do you believe?" Victoria asked. "I believe," Admiral Chun said slowly, "that you showed something important, not superiority, not even equality in the traditional sense, but a different kind of capability. You showed adaptability. You showed the willingness to continue when others would stop. You showed something that cannot be easily measured by the machines that test warrior potential." The tournament continued while Victoria healed. She watched the matches from her medical bed. She saw Lucas advance through the lower brackets. She saw other species continue their endless competitions for rank and prestige. She thought about Earth, about humans struggling against weather and animals and hunger, about the ways her species had learned to survive, not by being the strongest, but by being impossible to break when her ribs had healed enough that she could stand without agony. Zix came to see her. He said nothing about her match with Noah. Instead, he made an assignment for her next opponent. "You have advanced to the final bracket. Your next match is against Trell, a warrior from the Korth Empire. They are even stronger than Tranor. Their skin is naturally armored. Your previous techniques will not work on them. You will need to think differently about this fight." Victoria nodded. Already her mind was working through the problem. Already she was thinking about how to fight an opponent who was stronger, faster, and better defended than anyone she had faced before. She was thinking like a Deathworld survivor, thinking about how to defeat enemies that were superior in every measurable way. The final match was scheduled for the most important date of the tournament season. Every important figure in the Galactic Alliance would be watching, not just as entertainment, but as a moment that would define the future. Victoria versus Trell, human versus one of the galaxy's most dangerous warrior species. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Trell was massive. His skin was dark and segmented like armor plating. His movements were economical and precise. He had fought in actual wars, had killed in combat, had led military operations across 3 different star systems. He was not an amateur like Noah. He was a genuine warrior who treated combat as both art and survival. Mechanism. Victoria sat in the preparation room and Lucas came to see her before the match. He didn't say much, just sat beside her and held her hand. The gesture meant more to her than any words could have conveyed. It meant that someone believed in her, that someone from her own world thought she had a chance. "Don't try to be like them," Lucas said finally. "Don't try to fight like a Tranor, a Korth, or any advanced species. Fight like you. Fight like a human. Fight like you survived a planet that wanted to kill you every single day." Victoria squeezed his hand and stood to walk toward the arena. The noise from the crowd washed over her like a wave. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all watching, all wondering if a human could stand against the greatest warriors their civilizations could produce. The match began, and immediately Victoria understood that Trell was different from every opponent she had faced. He didn't attack recklessly like Noah. He didn't rely on flashy technique like the Krellians. Instead, he moved with the methodical purpose of someone executing a plan. His strikes came at angles designed to maximize damage. His footwork was positioned to cut off escape routes. His defense was absolute. Victoria tried her early techniques and found that they didn't work. Her grappling attempt slid off his armored skin. Her strikes had minimal impact against his natural protection. Her speed advantage was negated by his superior knowledge of distance and timing. She was losing, clearly and obviously losing in the middle of the second round. Trell caught her with a strike to her chest that knocked the wind from her lungs. She fell to one knee, gasping for air. The crowd made sounds that suggested this was the end, that the human had finally met an opponent who was simply better in every way that mattered. Victoria forced herself to stand, not because she thought she could win, but because standing was what humans did. Her species hadn't survived on a harsh world by accepting defeat when they fell. They survived by getting back up, by continuing. By being impossible to keep down. Something changed then. Not in the match itself, but in how she approached it. Victoria stopped trying to win and started trying to understand. She watched how Trell moved. She studied his patterns. She noticed that his breathing had a rhythm, that his footwork had a sequence, that even his powerful strikes followed a logical progression. She began to move not to defeat him but to learn from him. She took hits and noted how he delivered them. She was hit and got back up. And in getting back up, she was showing him something that his experience had never prepared him for. A warrior who would not quit. A being who valued continuation more than victory. A human from a planet where you fought, not because you were winning, but because stopping meant death. The fight moved into its third round, and suddenly Victoria was no longer trying to match Trell's power. She was using his own movements against him. She was predicting where he would be, because she now understood the logic of his actions. She was still losing in terms of damage taken, still bleeding, still moving slowly from the injuries he had inflicted. But she was fighting with absolute clarity of purpose. Trell made a strike, and Victoria was suddenly not there. She had moved with the precision of someone who understood the attack before it began. She came in low and drove her body against his legs, instead of trying to throw him. She simply held position and absorbed his counterstrikes. Her tolerance for pain, her acceptance of damage, her refusal to let pain dictate her actions, became a weapon more powerful than any technique. When Trell finally stopped attacking, when he realized that he could hurt this human but could not break her, something shifted in his expression. He looked at Victoria with something like recognition, perhaps respect. The match continued for another round, but it was different now. Both fighters understanding that this was not about victory, but about revelation. The bell rang for the final time, and both fighters stood. Neither had defeated the other. Both had survived. The judges ruled it a draw, which meant that Trell's perfect record remained intact. But his dominance had been questioned by someone smaller, weaker, younger. Someone from a species that existed on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Trell approached Victoria and placed his hand on her shoulder. A gesture of respect that crossed species lines. He said something in his own language, but the translators picked up the meaning. You fight like a warrior who has nothing to lose, because you understand that survival is more important than pride. That is the strength my people forgot generations ago. You have reminded us. As Victoria walked from the arena, she understood that the tournament might be ending in draws and technical wins. But something more important was beginning. She had shown the galaxy what humans truly were. Not primitive beings trying to play with advanced technology, but warriors from a world that demanded everything from its inhabitants. Beings who survived not through strength or technology, but through the deepest kind of determination. The tournament officially ended on a clear day when the observation decks were filled with light from the distant sun that the station orbited around. There was no champion crowned, because the final rounds had resulted in multiple draws and technical victories that defied the traditional scoring system. The Galactic Council convened to determine how to rank the competitors when the normal methods had become insufficient. Victoria sat in the observation room with Emma and Lucas while decisions were being made about her future. She was tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. tired in the way that came from pushing against limits that seemed insurmountable and finding that you could somehow cross them anyway. You did it, Emma said. You changed how the entire galaxy views humanity. I fought some matches, Victoria said simply. I didn't change anything. I just refused to lose. That is exactly what changed everything, Lucas said. Before you, humans were a question mark. We were an experiment in integration. After you, humans are a capability that the Galactic Alliance cannot ignore. Some species are frightened by what you represent. Some are excited. All of them are thinking differently about us. Admiral Chung came to find Victoria in her quarters the next morning. His expression was grave in a way that suggested he was bringing important news. He sat across from her and folded his hands carefully before speaking. The Council has made a decision about your status and future, he said. Officially, you and Trell have been declared joint recipients of the tournament honor. Neither of you was defeated. Both of you demonstrated extraordinary capability. This is the first time in the Academy's history that such a decision has been made. What about unofficially? Victoria asked, understanding that there was more to the story. Unofficially, Admiral Chung continued. Your victories have created a significant political problem for several council members. There are species who see human integration as a threat to established power structures. There are others who see it as an opportunity for alliance and cooperation that could benefit everyone. The question now is not whether humans are capable, but what humanity will do with that capability. He paused and then added, I am recommending you for a diplomatic position, not a military one. You would represent humanity in direct negotiations with council members. You would be the visible symbol of what humans can contribute to the alliance. Victoria considered this. I would be a symbol, not a fighter. You would be both, Admiral Chum said. Your willingness to fight was what gave you credibility. Now you use that credibility to fight for something larger than yourself. The real struggle for humanity in the Galactic Alliance is not in the tournament arena. It is in the council chambers and in the political discussions that determine the future. Zix came to see her before she left the station. The commander who had doubted her, who had assigned her to the tournament, expecting her to fail, who had watched her progress with something that might have been growing respect. I was wrong about humans, he said directly. No preamble, no softening of the truth. I judged your species based on assumptions that were not accurate. I underestimated the value of the qualities that Deathworld survival instills in a being. I underestimated your species, and I was wrong. What changed your mind? Victoria asked. You continued, Zix said. When any logical warrior would have quit. When the damage exceeded any reasonable threshold. When victory seemed impossible, you continued. That is not weakness of mind as I assumed. That is strength of will that transcends physical measurement. Victoria packed her things slowly, understanding that she was leaving the station, but was arriving somewhere more complicated and dangerous than any arena. The tournament had been simple in its way. Clear rules, obvious opponents. Measurable victory and defeat. Political negotiations would be infinitely more complex. She would be fighting battles where the rules were unclear, where the opponents shifted and changed, where victory might not be immediate or obvious. The day before her departure, Lucas took her to the observation deck one final time. They stood together looking at the stars and the vast emptiness that separated worlds from each other. Thank you for showing us what we could be, Lucas said. I just fought. Victoria replied, No, Lucas said firmly. You showed us that we could stand against anyone, that our limitations were not what we thought they were, that a girl from Earth could look at the greatest warriors the galaxy could produce and refuse to be defeated by them. That changes everything about how humans see themselves. Victoria left the station with the understanding that the real score was far from finished. She had won matches, but the important battles were ahead of her. She would face politicians and council members and representatives of species that feared human capability. She would have to use words and negotiation and patience in ways that fighting had never required. But she carried with her the knowledge that she came from a world that demanded everything from its inhabitants. That she was human. That humans did not give up when faced with superior odds. That humans found ways to survive and adapt and continue when every logical calculation suggested they should fail. As her transport left the station, Victoria looked back at the Academy one final time. She had proven something about her species. But she understood that proof was just the beginning, the real work, the true test of what humanity could contribute to the Galactic Alliance. That was waiting for her in the political chambers and diplomatic venues where her real battles would unfold. The score was not finished. It was only beginning, and Victoria Grant from Minneapolis on planet Earth was ready to continue the fight in whatever form it would take.